Hey YouTube, this is an assembly and comparison of the Chicago Electric welding cart from Harbor Freight and the Northern Industrial welding cart, deluxe welding cart from Northern Tools. I picked up the Harbor Freight cart today. Normal price $229 minus $100 sale, made it $129. I had a 25% off coupon, which brought it down another $32, making it $97 before tax, New York State tax, about 8%, so I had $8 to that. So about $105, $106. The Northern Tool card was normally $219, down to $189 on sale. The shipping was $57. It does weigh 94 pounds, so that makes sense. Making the total price $248. So it's $247.48 versus about $105, $106 with tax. This video will go over assembly, comparing the parts as it's being assembled, and then an overview after they're together. Thank you. Okay, I got the two units next to each other, both upside down. I have the Harbor Freight parts over here and the Northern Tool parts over here. First thing I noticed is that the Harbor Freight has the screws screw right into the sheet metal. Just screw like that. It just goes into a cutout in the sheet metal, where the Northern Tools has threaded inserts for a bolt. I don't think the threaded inserts are better, but as long as the sheet metal doesn't give way, these will be fine, and you can always replace them with nuts and bolts if you wanted to. When it comes to casters and wheels, the Northern Tool caster is much bigger and nicer than the Harbor Freight caster. This is the Harbor Freight has a plastic wheel, where the Northern Tool is more rubbery. Again, you can buy at Harbor Freight, you can buy basically this caster for about $6. So if it really bothers you, you can just replace the caster. I think this one will be fine. When it comes to the wheel, the Harbor Freight one, this one, is a little smaller in diameter, but it's a much heavier feeling wheel. This is a plastic hub. This may be plastic too. That's steel. But I'd say I like the Harbor Freight wheel better than the Northern wheel, but I like the Northern caster better than the Harbor Freight caster. So I'd say if you just buy a couple good quality, the better caster at Harbor Freight, I think it's about $6, you'd be better off with the Harbor Freight in this department. When it comes to chains, the Harbor Freight wins for sure. Nice heavy chain on it, where the Northern Tool has a pretty small chain. It's probably strong, and it's strong enough to hold a bottle, but the one came with the Harbor Freight is much nicer. You can just see what you're getting, the size difference there. Alright, first step is to install the casters. On the Harbor Freight, there's 4 screws. Use a number 3 screwdriver or flathead to install those. Just add the 2 more and repeat on the other side. Over on the Northern Tool, there's a short bolt, then lock nut, then washer. Let's get tightened down with a 13mm socket. They are metric. It's 4 on each side. Okay, just securing up the last couple fasteners there for the casters. Okay, next step is to install the bottom plate where the tank is going to sit. The Northern tool has 8 fasteners, 8 bolts that screw into the nut inserts here. The axle for the wheel goes through these 2 side holes afterwards, where the Harbor Freight has a one piece where the axle is welded to the bottom plate. There's 6 screws holding that to the base, and there's also a reinforcement. So we're going to go make it fastened. All the Harbor Freight hardware is the same. So all those screws go into any of the holes. Where the Northern tool comes with 2 different size metric bolts. These little ones here, that gives you again a lock washer, flat washer. We gotta move this a little bit. There we go. Just install just tighten up the 8 of those. Okay, next step is the wheel installation. The Harbor Freight already has the axle in place, so you just take a wheel either direction, slide it over the axle shaft. There's a bolt with a lock washer and flat washer that screws into a threaded hole in the side of the axle, the end of the axle. You can snug these up and the wheels spin free. Northern tool, that's a separate axle. Slide that through. Take the wheel with the part that sticks out, put that on the inside. Then there's a washer and a cotter pin. Put the cotter pin through. Bend the cotter pin with a pair of pliers while holding the axle shaft. You may need a second pair of pliers for this. Same thing for this side, washer, then cotter pin, and bend it over. Okay, taking some measurements. The Harbor Freight overall length on the bottom is 30 inches. The Northern tool is 27. Harbor Freight 14 1/4. The Northern tool is also 14 1/4. Next step is handle installation. The handle on the Harbor Freight is a thicker overall diameter and a nice thick coating on it. The Northern tool is a little smaller diameter, but I do like how the Northern tool handle mounts. See, the Northern tool has 2 slots on the inside. This part of the handle is threaded. So you just have to squeeze it a little bit to get it to go between the 2. And then slide it back until the holes line up. There we go. Once you get the holes lined up, take the small bolt, the same ones you used for the bottom plate, with a lock washer on first and the flat washer, and these screw right in the side. Just tighten up with a 10mm socket, maybe 2 on each side. The Harbor Freight mounts on the outside of the unit. where there's the same sheet metal holes there. So that just goes over. Then you have the number 3 screwdriver, number 3 Phillips or flathead. The screw goes right in there. 1 screw here remaining, and then the 2 on the other side. Okay, I got both handles secured. You notice the Harbor Freight unit handle sticks out a bit less than the Northern Tools. So I could measure the distance here. Northern Tools is about 4.5. Whereas the Harbor Freight is about 1 3/4 of an inch. Okay, next step is to install the brackets for the cylinder. The Harbor Freight unit on the left here uses the same screws with the number 3 screwdriver. 1 screw on each side. The top and bottom brackets are identical. Then you hang the chain from that. The lower bracket goes on down here exactly the same way. I'm in the middle of the video. Alright. Okay, the Northern Tools is a similar bracket with a V versus a curve. I kind of like the curve better. Again, there's 3 holes in the bracket, only 2. Hold it on, the same bolt, lock washer, flat washer. Okay, use the 10mm. And hang the chain, the northern chain, from its bracket. See the difference in the chain diameter. I think either one will hold the cylinder fine. It's not like it's going to snap, but the curved channel here on the Harbor Freight versus the V on Northern Tools a little nicer, as well as the thicker chain. It just looks better. Okay, I got all the bottle brackets and chains in place. The thickness of the brackets appear to be the same between the Harbor Freight and the Northern Tools. The Harbor Freight chain definitely wins. Even though, I mean, I'm sure either of them will support the bottle without any problem. I do like the curve on the Harbor Freight versus the V on the Northern Tools, but either one should be more than adequate at supporting the bottle. As you see, the bottle shelf has a slightly different depth on the two. The Harbor Freight shelf is 9.5 inches deep, where the Harbor Freight is about 8 1/8 inches deep. The width on them, the width between the tires on the actual steel is about 13 3/4. Back on the Harbor Freight we have 14 1/8. The wheel diameter on the Harbor Freight is about 6 inches. On the Northern Tool, we're at about 6 3/4 of an inch. Axle appears to be about a half inch axle on either one. Okay, next step is the cable holders. The Harbor Freight unit comes with 4, 2 on each side. The Northern Tools has 1 on each side. To install the Harbor Freight, just insert the slot, lift up, get one of the screws, and thread it in with your number 3 screwdriver. Let's repeat that for holder number 2 and then 3 and 4 on the opposite side. Over here on the Northern Tools, the holders have threaded inserts. All the hardware on this had threaded inserts. Using a nut, metric nut, flat washer, lock washer, get threaded right in there. A 10mm socket. There's none in the back. There's a second one over on the side. Both units come with a draw divider for the top draw. The Northern Tools drops right in, where the Harbor Freight comes in 4 pieces. It's a little tricky. 2 are longer and 2 are shorter. So you can find the two longer ones go width-wise, the 2 shorter ones go lengthwise. So I'm just going to stand them up. There we go. You have to put it together in the drawer because the handle gets the nice lip that's in the way. Just put the ones that go left and right in first, and then drop the forward and back ones in place. And those are ready to go. Okay, now they're all together. I'm going to go over the dimensional differences between the two. They're both 14 inches wide. Basically, inside is exactly 14 inches. The Harbor Freight has a slightly taller lip. The Harbor Freight lip is about just shy of 7/8 of an inch, where the Northern Tool lip, looking at about just a little over a half. Top dimensions, Harbor Freight, 20 inches deep, 14 wide. We're about 19 3/4 on the Northern Tool before it slopes. A couple things, I like this little slope here on the Northern Tool, but I'm not too crazy about these screw heads. Again, it's not a big deal if you just put a thin rubber mat on top. But if you were going to try to clean this, these screws might get in the way. Where the Harbor Freight, there's nothing on top at all to interfere. When it comes to the drawers, both top drawers have organizers. There's no latch on the Harbor Freight. It just has that where it holds it as a little rubber piece in the back. So it takes a little bit, and then it opens. The Northern Tool has latches. Lift up, It opens when you close it. It latches closed. I don't think these would be very easy to open with a gloved hand. Not that you could grab a tip or something with a gloved hand. Drawer dimensions. Top drawer width on the Harbor Freight, 10 3/4. On the Northern Tools, we're looking at 11 1/4. A little wider drawer. Depth 9 3/4. Depth here about 10 1/2 to the back of this, under this lip. Next drawer down. Same width. They're all going to be the 10 3/4 on the Harbor Freight and the 11 about 11 1/8 on this. On the inside of the Northern Tools, there's small. There's some nuts on the inside where this is held on. On the Harbor Freight, there's rivets. Drawer depth on the second drawer down is 15 3/4. On the Harbor Freight, we have 16 1/4. Sorry, 15 3/4 on the Northern Tool. Again, that has the latch. This has the stop that holds it. Third drawer down. Same 15 3/4. This latch actually came broken. It's no big deal, but if you see, it's actually cracked. I'm going to ask them to send me a new one. It may have gotten damaged in shipping, I don't know. But this drawer is 5 7/8 deep. This one's about 5 1/4 inches deep. Now the biggest difference between the two is the bottom. The Harbor Freight has a flap that opens. Northern Tool has a drawer. This drawer is exactly 9 inches deep. By the same 15 3/4. The Harbor Freight depth to still close the door looks like about 19 1/4. I do like, and again this has a latch. This has a magnetic hold. It's pretty weak. I might have to set it out a little bit. But, overall, that's the single biggest difference that I see between the two is the draw. I prefer the draw. To try to get a welding helmet under here, you're kind of just bending down and throwing it in. Again, it's not a big deal. I just prefer reaching. Again, this latch. This one goes down. Oops. This one goes down. This one goes down. This one goes up. They latch nicely. I like having the draw for the helmet. You could also throw maybe a few things around it too. So there's an overview of the two. I leave any comments or questions, and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you.